Chairman, I yield.
Gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. Ambassador Bolton, how many countries are there in the world?
We have diplomatic recognition with over 190. There are 193 members of the UN. There are
193 countries. My guess is we're the United States of America. We're the biggest, strongest, country on the planet. My guess is we have embassies in just about everyone. Maybe not Iran and North Korea, and a handful.
A few we don't recognize.
Yeah, a few we don't recognize, right? But so 180 some countries, we've got an embassy in those countries. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in all those countries, the embassy is in the capital or the seat of government, except for one. Is that right?
Well, the only exception, the answer to that is yes, basically. The only exception to that is occasionally a country moves its capital city.
So it takes you a while to relocate.
And yeah. I looked this up to be sure. For many years, our embassy in Belize was in Belize City, even though the capital was in Belmopan. Yeah. But I see 10 years ago, we finally moved our embassy. So we may be down to Israel.
So 188 countries that we recognize, we have an embassy. Every single one, we put the capital, or excuse me, put the embassy in the capital or the seat of government.
There must be something to that.
Except one. Now, Israel became a country in 48. Is that right?
Pardon me?
Israel became a country, became a state in 48.
We were the first country to recognize its independence.
And exactly, my next question. And who was the first head of state to recognize the nation of Israel?
Harry Truman.
Harry Truman, President of the United States of America. And then just a few years ago, well, I guess more than a few years ago, 1995, we passed an act, Jerusalem Embassy Act, that almost every single member of Congress voted for. Is that right?
That's correct. Overwhelmingly.
I think it was like a voice vote in the House, but in the Senate it was like 93 to 5, right?
Something like that.
And for this act to take effect and for the embassy to go to Jerusalem, this is amazing. Congress doesn't have to do anything, something we're actually pretty darn good at, right? We don't have to do it, and frankly, the president doesn't have to do anything. Is that right?
That's correct, and it was a sign Congress was willing to pay for it too, which is also interesting.
So this is what I get. We don't have to do anything. The president doesn't have to do anything. Everyone has spoken. The president campaigned on this. The American people elected him as this was a central issue of his campaign. We do it everywhere else except one country, which just happens to be one of our best friends in the entire world. Is that right?
That's correct.
So this is what gets me. It's like, this is real simple to me. This is about remembering your friends. This is about loyalty. This is about recognizing the fact that there is one country in the world who stands with us every single time. They happen to be the one country where we get our Judeo-Christian value system from, the state of Israel, and yet they're the one nation where we won't put the embassy where it's supposed to be. And particularly now when you think about what we went through the last 8 years with the previous administration, and more importantly, what happened the last few months of that administration at the United Nations, this is the right time to do this thing. And that's why the president recognized it, campaigned on it, and one of the reasons I would say the American people elected him. Would you agree, Ambassador Bolton?
I think that's entirely true, yes.
So let's just get it done. Let's just get it done, right?
I'm entirely persuaded.
All right. Yeah. I kind of thought you'd be. That's why I asked the question to you. I think actually most of the panelists. I want to thank the chairman. He's worked hard on this. I want to thank all our witnesses who came here. Most importantly, I want to thank the President of the United States, who had the courage to say this was the right thing to do. The time is now, particularly in light of what we went through the last 8 years. Let's get this done. Let's get it done as quickly as possible. I understand there's some practical concerns. You've all outlined them. Ambassador Gold outlined. That's fine, but let's get this done. It is the right thing to do, and it's most important. When it comes to, you got to remember who your friends are, who share your common set of values, the values that I think make the world a better place. Let's recognize all that and get this thing done. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields the rest of his time to the chairman. Mort Klein, the significance of Jerusalem, obviously, I think is self-evident to the Jewish people. But in America, you're involved in politics. You know folks from Jewish activists to Christian activists. This city matters to people here in America, does it not?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the most recent polls show that Americans support moving the embassy to Jerusalem and keeping it an undivided city by over 4 to 1. So it's really overwhelming. And by the way, even liberal ministers, I just wanted to add, like Yossi Beilin, extreme left-wing ministers, said the embassy must be moved immediately. So that's really the consensus in Israel overwhelmingly. But yes, in America, the overwhelming majority of people support this move and have supported it for 22 years since it's been. But I may say the fundamental premise of why there's a debate is that the Arabs claim that Jerusalem is holy to Muslims. That's the premise. If it was not holy to Muslims, if they say they want to move it, that Haifa was holy to them, nobody would even talk. But this is a fundamental falsehood. The majority of people living in Jerusalem since the mid-1800s have been Jews. Second largest number of people, Christians. Muslims are the third since the mid-1800s. And the Arabs say, well, our Quran says that Muhammad went from Jerusalem to heaven. But what does it really say? It says Muhammad had a dream, not an occurrence, a dream, that on his winged horse he flew from the sacred mosque to the furthest mosque. The evidence makes it clear that this claim that the furthest mosque in Jerusalem can't be. When Palestine is mentioned in the Quran, it's referred to as the closest land, not the furthest land. So Jerusalem, which is in Palestine, cannot be the furthest mosque when Palestine is the closest land. And listen to this, one more thing. Palestine then had not yet been conquered by the Muslims. There wasn't a single mosque in Palestine when the Quran was written.
Great. The gentleman's time has expired, and the chair now recognizes Ms. Fox for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank all of our witnesses here today. It's a very enlightening presentation, and I want to say I want to associate myself with the comments of some of my colleagues. That way I don't have to repeat the comments of my colleagues. Ambassador Gold, first thing I want to say is I think you do a wonderful job when you present the many different cases that you present, and I occasionally have a chance to see you on in the media. But I want to follow up on your verbal testimony. You mentioned the topic of Israel's ability to preserve the integrity of the status quo of the Holy Land sites. I find this interesting given that detractors of moving the embassy claim that it would be inflammatory and inciting. Can you expand on the ability of Israel to prove as a stabilizing force for religious exercise and speech and ward off religious incitement? Do you think Israel's sovereignty with respect to Jerusalem would be a positive influence on religious pluralism throughout the region?
First of all, Israel views itself as sovereign in Jerusalem today. That's the situation. Now, in terms of protecting stability and security in that area, just go on the major holidays to the area of the Temple Mount. Come on Ramadan and see how many tens of thousands of Muslims are praying near the Al-Aqsa Mosque because they can't even get into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it's so full. Come to, on the time of Christmas, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and see all the Christians who stream in for Christian holidays in the Old City. And then come to the Western Wall and see on the Jewish holidays, particularly the pilgrimage festivals like Passover, Shavuot, and others, come to the Old City and pray at the Western Wall. Jerusalem works. It operates well. And changing or expressing uncertainty of any kind about Israel's position only feeds radical elements who want to argue that the Jewish people have no connection with Jerusalem, or feeds all kinds of other baseless theories. Last but not least, I want to make this point because it is I think, a current point that's very important. There is a sheikh named Raed Salah who heads the northern branch of the Islamic movement, which is basically part of the Muslim Brotherhood. He used to come to Jerusalem a lot. He has been running around Israel and the region saying Israel is undermining the foundations of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this heats up the whole region this lie. And by the way, he has faced prosecution in the Israeli legal system. But one of the things we have to do is expose this lie, because frankly, the only one who ever threatened the foundations of any of the Muslim shrines has been him, when he led groups to dig out tons of archaeological areas near the Al-Aqsa Mosque and created all kinds of problems which I don't have time to go into. Israel is taking care of the holy sites. It has been taking care of the holy sites and will continue to take care of them. And if you don't have a responsible power to protect the holy sites, you're setting up a recipe for the next regional conflict.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And again, I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. I yield back.